We're continuing on in Module 3 with the Financial Transitions tool that we call the one-pager. This is a presentation tool as opposed to a processing tool. There are summaries designed for easy comprehension, retention, and recall by using the science of data visualization. They're used to create alignment between you and the client, as well as alignment within the client themselves. Remember, we talked about that as well with the decision-free zone. It helped produce confidence in you as the advisor, but also confidence within the client themselves. Once they calm down, they get clear, they understand, they have some process around them, it increases their sense of capability for making some of the bigger decisions that are probably on the horizon for them. Alignment is created when there's clarity and there's confidence combined. And you know, without alignment, not much happens. Things tend to stagnate or spin or go into neutral. Every client can benefit from a take-home piece. This isn't just for clients in transition, although it's essential for clients in transition. One of the few tools, in addition to the communication tool, that you use with all clients, Decision-Free Zone would also be one of those. When things are going well, they're a reminder. When things are not going well, they help to explain to the client and help them remember what's going on, what's important, what their options are, and what your recommendations may be for them. The most common types of one-pagers that we use are the thought clouds. You saw that in the decision-free zone. You may be laying out timelines. It may be some steps, some sequence of actions, comparisons, the option to do A, B, or C, something like that. Could be the allocation of a portfolio, the allocation where cash is going to come from or for savings. And it also is very useful for cash flow. So when you use one-pagers and you use the science of data visualization, clarity goes up, confidence in decision increases, and the confidence, clarity, and alignment around your recommendations also increases. So one of the fun facts is that we humans are hardwired for visual data presentation. Visuals effortlessly attract the eye and the brain. Just takes less effort to understand something that is presented to you visually, if it's done properly, than it is to read copy. Depends upon the type of learner as well. We know that auditory learners really don't read, they scan. They listen and they scan. A visual learner really likes to see the information and then be probably given the facts around the information. Visuals are just easier to comprehend, again, if done well. And if done well, visuals are processed 6,000 times faster in the brain than text, 60,000 times faster than the brain. Did you hear that I just said 6,000? Well, that's because it always amazes me that it is that powerful. They also say that it increases recall by 650%. I again would probably say something like 65% because it's just so amazing to me that you can have such a jump in recall and processing time. This will be one of your favorite tools once you get the hang of it. So there are some steps, and this is preparation. This is going to take you time to do the right kind of visual for each one of your clients. First of all, we want to think about what are we doing? Is this an exercise or a presentation about timeline, steps, comparison, allocation, or maybe it's some kind of a flow chart? So think about what you want to portray. The next one is to create the first draft and create titles with objective statements like name and dates. Select shapes. Place a title inside the shapes. These are short, some people say pithy titles, some people say like titles for a song, but sometimes it's just plain factual. It's a name, it's an amount, it's a date. So you have shapes, you have some title inside, then you fill the shapes with only the copy that is necessary. Sometimes there's very little copy that's necessary. You can use arrows and other shapes to indicate relationships or flow. Once you get the first one done, don't be hard on yourself. It might be a little bit awkward. Then sit with a team member and let them tell you what they see on the page. See if it really tells the basic elements of the story that you want to convey, just on its own. When I look at the one-pagers as part of the assignments, I want to be able to figure out, without reading any of the fact pattern or the backstory, I want to figure out what's going on just by looking at the visual. So when you're in this draft stage, you're going to notice some discrepancies between what you want to say and what someone thinks the page is saying. And you can resolve the discrepancy by maybe changing the shapes, the size, the color, the type of the shape, or maybe eliminating altogether. This is a situation where less is usually more. And then go back to the team and have them look at it again and see if you've gotten any closer. So I'm going to tell you that this is going to take you 45 minutes to maybe an hour, hour and a half to get it just right. But so give yourself time before the client comes in. It's hard to wing this in front of a client. You can by using some of the templates that we're going to show you at the end of this on demand. But even if it works well that way, you might want to go back and clean it up and give the client the cleaned up version. So step 3 is the delivery. So first, practice with a team member with the objective of discovering what you need to explain and clarify. One-pagers don't always tell the story without having you say something. There's always some explanation, but the goal is for the explanation that you say. The words that you use should match the words on the page. That really helps an auditory learner. They don't have that same disconnect if they hear a concept mentioned in one with one term and then the page says something else. There's a disconnect. Now, of course, they can figure that out, but it just takes brain power to figure that out. And we're trying to work with people who may have less than they normally have. When you're with a client, ask them and encourage them to make notes on the page. Ask them to explain back to you what this page says. And the way you do that, it's not a test. You're not trying to catch them up or anything like that. What I would say to them is, you know, I laid this out in a particular way that made sense to me, but I'm not sure if I communicated everything to you. So could we just take a moment where you tell me what you see on the page? What's the story that is being told to you? And that's a great way for you and them to see if there's some gaps. We know that people are socialized to be pleasant and nice and to be agreeable in meetings. And if they're just agreeing because they think they should agree, then you might be missing some important points. This is one way to discover some of the gaps that could probably be there, to tell you the truth. You can also give them and should give them a copy to take home. If you get this right, people will refer to this as the paper. I don't know why, but it happens all over the country. At least here in the US, people will say, remember that paper that you gave me? Or could we make a paper like the one that you gave me previously? And it's great when you are talking to your client. I was talking to one of our people in the core training the other day. She was telling me about a divorced woman who has more than enough money for the lifestyle that she intends to live, but she's really fearful that there's something about that money that's not going to work. And her fear is really clouding her comprehension of why she really is in pretty good shape. So the advisor said that when she calls to check in, she'll ask the client to have that in front of her. And the client will say, yeah, the paper, right, I get the paper. And then the advisor can say, now look over here in the blue box on the left. See, if you go down that, this is what I'm talking about. Oh yeah, I got it. And then they can move forward. But once you've got it right, save it. Keep it for the future. Keep it for that client when life changes on them again, which we know it will. If they're still breathing, there's still change ahead of them. Sometimes the old one-pagers can be updated. And again, it's very familiar. Clients have already worked their way through understanding what that is, and it really does help. You could also use it to revisit the information that you used to maybe make some decisions or to delay some decisions. And when you pull this out from several months ago or a year ago, it brings everybody back to the conversation and the agreements that were made previously. And then you can take the new information or the new circumstances and discuss from there. If the client's not following through on their side, use the one-pager for that discussion. Should we change something on this page? Did we miss something? Is there something new that needs to be added? This is the one page, excuse me, is a co-created process. So it's not you telling them how things go. They have given you information, you've gone back and forth, and this is agreed process that you have. So when something's not going right is really a tricky term here. When a client isn't moving in the direction, making the choices and the decisions that was discussed, something's up. And this can be a way to discover what that is. And maybe you just need to put everything on hold for a while for a combination of reasons. But having this to look at is a safe place for both you and the client to go to have some of those conversations that might be a little uncomfortable. So here's some general tips. Stick to one story per page. If you're talking about cash flow, talk about cash flow, not where all that cash is going to come from. It probably comes from multiple sources. And those sources, if it's a portfolio and the portfolio has an income side and a growth side, you want to illustrate that later. One story per page. The layout, the colors, and the shape should tell the story with the least amount of copy. When you go through those steps and you go through the draft, try and eliminate as much copy as possible. The story should go from top to bottom and left to right. Use words only when you need them. Try to find some icons or some other objects that you can place instead of words. And avoid legends and keys. They make the eye move back and forth to understand a page. Takes more time, takes more brain power to comprehend. So if you eliminate that, will increase their processing time and processing ease. So here's some tips for creating. You can find lines and arrows and shapes using Microsoft or PowerPoint. You go to Insert in the toolbar, then to Shapes, and then click on the shape that you want. They're going to come out in filled in a blue color with white font. It's just how it's set up. So you're probably going to want to change the fill and change the font. You can get some advanced graphics from ShapeArt. They tend to be a little more difficult to deal with. When we talk about, they're interesting, but they can also confine you. So try to do it freeform first. For the shape outlines, click on the image, and then you go to Format in the toolbar, select Shape Outline, and you can change the outline color of any of the shapes you have. As I mentioned, when you go to Shape, and you click on a shape that shows up on your page, it will be in the same color blue with the white font. When you eliminate the fill color, again, by going to Format, the toolbar, and select No Color or change the color, you'll see that there's an outline. You can make the outline thicker, you can make it dotted, and you can certainly change the colors. And then there's also shape effects, where you can go to Format in the toolbar and select some shape effects. It's a shadow. Maybe you can change the gradation. There are some effects that are really great, but for the most part, you want to not be too fancy with this. So one of the, excuse me, one of the things that we use um, all the time for the thought clouds. For the one-pagers is the thought clouds that we use around the decision-free zone. But there's also timeline, steps, comparisons, allocations, and cash. And you can go to the Noun Project, nounproject.com, and you can find some icons. You see there's a thumbs up icon here that hopefully pulled your attention there. That's the whole point of the icon, and it's a sign of yes, okay, easy, look here. So you can use, you can find icons like that at the Noun Project. You can buy them one at a time, or you can spend $40. We spend $40 a year, and then you have unlimited. So this is what I mean by the thought clouds. We start as a scatter. Remember, this was the MJ story that you heard in the decision-free zone, and we just scattered all the things that were on her mind. And then we used the thought clouds and we organized it into colors and places on the page. And you know that each one of these items in each of these thought clouds has a big story behind it. And there probably would end up being a single page just on housing and all the different choices that she has, so she can start to sort and organize and prioritize what she's thinking about with housing. And in her case, if you remember, she'd probably do that several times. Same with business, same with investments like that. So this is a page that just says, wow, there's a lot going on, and here's the first step of organization for what's going on, because then you're going to go into now, soon, and later. This is not where you get into the details of any one of these topics. Here's another one. This is Harold, and Harold's a chiropractor, and his wife is having an affair with the trainer at the gym. So life has changed dramatically for Harold. And they have children, and his wife is moving out. So he has a business, and he has children to take care of, and Harold is a mess. So with Harold, he wanted to know how to tell the kids and what to do about the kids. Did he need to find a good lawyer? How can he afford the legal fees? Should he hire an associate, someone to help him run the practice? Does he have liability by running the practice when he's so upset? Maybe he'll make mistakes. So he had a lot going on here. And so this was his scatter and his thought clouds. And for him, we went into a visual with now, soon, and later on the same page. He was in a high state of confusion. And in that confusion, he could easily have made some costly mistakes and unfortunate mistakes for his children. So this was what the visual looked like for Harold. This is a visual to illustrate steps. And this is something that was done for a widow. She was at the very early stage, and she had low capabilities for handling just about anything. So the purpose of this one page and of the process that she had with her CEFT was to keep things as simple as possible while I'm frozen in place. That's it. And to do that, the now list, now for the next 6 months, was to keep life the same, no big changes. And then the who and the how was, when in doubt, discuss with the CEFT. She needed to rest and to do some exercise. She had always worked with a trainer, so she was going to continue in light exercise and shorter training sessions. But just to work her way back into that, and the time of day went from early morning to midday. She needed to have an auto bill pay set up. She didn't feel like she would be able to keep up with everything. And that was a big deal. So that led into 3 steps to accomplish that goal. The other things on her now list was to talk to her brother and sister weekly. They'll call her, and to meet with the CEFT once a month, scheduled well in advance. So what we really wanted to, this is how she's going to keep things simple while she's frozen in place. And the 3 steps that she needs to take is to sign the papers to transfer the money from the insurance company to the money market account, and then set up a transfer of $10,000 a month into the checking account for the person to pay bills. And number 3 was to set up auto pay from the checking account for $6,000 in fixed expenses, and for anyone who's going to help her with that to be able to access the money. So this is all she had to do for the next 6 months. The red and the arrow and then the icon of the 3 steps conveys it right away. So when she looks at this, she knows that she's got 3 steps that she needs to take care of. So comparisons. What we were looking at in this case was a husband and wife divorcing, and they had a rental property that had once been a home, but it's now a rental property. And the question was, should they sell it now, or should they wait 2 years to get better tax treatment on the sale? And the question again was it going to go up in value or down in value? What was the difference? So the CEFT said that the purpose of this one-pager was to sell now or to wait 2 years. And what he created was a legend over on the left: sale price, mortgage, cost of sale was in each one of these funnels. She marked them 1, 2, and 3, and he had a date and the assumed price and then the net amount. So it was all there, but it was really too much was going on that wasn't necessary. So the next step was to simplify. And so to simplify, we first took away the legend, so you didn't have to look at that. Second, you notice that it took away the 1, 2, and 3. That was pretty obvious, didn't need to do that. And then when you looked at that, it was less copy underneath. See, underneath like 2, it says negative 7.5 value in the 2 years. You can take that away. It's 2 years and the assume is the negative 7.5. So it cleaned it up a bit. Same information. But again, what are all those balls? It's hard to read. Even when this is in all on one page, it's hard to read. So we came up with this to simplify it. Again, you don't have the legend. You don't have the extra color in there. You don't have the 1, 2, and 3. You have the dates and the assumption of a 7.5 increase or decrease, and you have the amounts at the end. You have the mortgage, sell, mortgage, and cost there, so you know what the numbers are. So remember, this is what it looked like, and now it looks like this. It's much simpler. It's much easier to attract. Now, when people are in struggle and they're stressed out, if you give them too much information, they're not going to read anything. Too much is the same thing as nothing. Might even be a negative because people think that they've been informed and they're not reading, so they're not informed. So there's a lot of assumptions going on. So keep it as simple as possible. Now, when you get to this 3rd iteration, I would make sure the client knew that whole story, that there wasn't something important that we had left out. I suspect there was nothing important that we left out. We just simplified what was there. So this is comparisons of selling a house at different dates with different assumed rates of return. So next one is allocation. So Dan and Elaine needed to feel at ease. They felt like they had taken money out of the market prior to the drop in 2008, and they had a tough time going back in. In their head, they never lost a dime, and if they went back in, this was now 2 years later, they weren't sure how that was going to work, and they didn't want to lose a dime. So when you look at this, there are 3 silos. They're numbered. They have an intention, absolute safety, very modest risk, and long-term growth. And then they have amounts. And then inside, the purpose, the method, and the outcome is listed inside. At the end, the very bottom in italicized font is their purpose. We never lost a dime, smart to stay ahead of inflation. We took care of ourselves and our family. But it's too much information. So the question is, what do you need next? Depends upon the function. Do you want the client to know the details of each category? And if that's the case, then you might want to do one page for each of the three allocations. If they just want the basics, then stick to the main points and use the proportionate shapes to indicate some differences. So this is how we cleaned this one up. We took out the copy of the purpose, method, outcome. Again, that could be on each one of these, could have its own page. But the purpose, what we were going for now, the balkanized, if you will, balkanized purpose, is to feel at ease, that they understand what their portfolios are doing. So we kept the number 1, 2, and 3 because it was easier for discussion within the conversation between the couple and their advisor. So that's another thing you want to think about, is think about their terminology. They wanted to break things into 1, 2, and 3. The advisors were very sophisticated and had lots of lovely language and technical things that generally Dan is very good at. He expects that. That's how he processes. He's a wealth creator. He built a business and had this as his liquid wealth. This wasn't all the other things that he owns. So he likes technical. But for this discussion between he and his wife, Elaine, about what they will do with this $18 million and why, this had to be very clear and straightforward. She, as well as he, needed confidence they're making good decisions. And they had a tendency to talk about money in blocks. Their advisor was trying to get them to think in terms of these silos or categories. So she would use 1, 2, and 3. So 1, 2, and 3 is there. What is meant by that is underneath very modest risk, long-term growth like that. Just the amount is inside the silo, and then their real driver for that block of money or allocation of money is present. The other thing I'd like to call your attention to is that the sizes are different. You remember in the first one, all 3 were the same. In this one, you see right away that the majority of money, 8 million, is dedicated to absolute safety. And then the balance, the 10 million, is divided equally. So those are 2 equal shapes that are smaller than the 8 million. So again, brain is processing. Here you have to read to figure that out. Here you do not. You look at the page, you say, yes, I got it. It's a pretty sophisticated guy. This worked. They finally implemented after many years of fog and just circular conversation. Many years, it wasn't that many, it was about 2 years. And he has all these other assets that are illiquid assets, mineral rights, drilling rights, business, and real estate. And he came to his advisor one day and he said, okay, I get this thing that you all see on the screen, but I don't get that. How does my money really work? And that was a little more complicated, but it was done, and it was done with the same, not quite as simple as this, because there were several asset classes there, and some were just for capital growth, and the others were income or liquidity. But anyway, the nice thing about this story, and you'll find it with your clients, is that if you get it right and you really put them at ease, they will fold that paper up and they will keep it in their pocket everywhere they go. And that's what this guy Dan did. He has it when he takes his wallet out of his pants pocket at night and he puts it on a particular place in the dresser according to Elaine. That paper is always part of it. He puts it in his pocket every day with his wallet. Does he look at it every day? Probably not. But it's there. He knows what it is. It gives him confidence. And they too refer to it as the paper. So let's, as we end, let's take a look at cash flow. You all do cash flow presentations, and you have several software programs that you use that will illustrate cash flow and sustainable cash flow and all of that. I have no problem with that. I love the evolution that has come about, but I want to tell you that if you create something that is not a push button off your software, it looks more personal. It looks more relevant. It feels like you and the client are really conversing. You're both aligned. You're looking at this concept. In this case, it's cash flow. I understand that some people have compliance requirements and some people do not. So check through as you do that. Usually there's people who need it. There's a series of disclaimers that have been created over the years that have made everybody happy. If that's not your concern, something like what I'm going to show you, or even the thing that we just looked at with Dan and Elaine, maybe on top, maybe the first page that you see when you meet with a client to go over their portfolio. So maybe in the case of Dan and Elaine, you have portfolio 1, 2, and 3 to discuss with them, but this page is on top. So again, they get that orientation of the 3 buckets, there are silos, and roughly the amount and the purpose. And it can be the same with the cash flow. So the story here is that we're calling them Sam and Cheryl, want to know how they're going to pay their bills now that they sold the business. So the money that came from the business was divided equally into their trust 1 and 2. And by the way, coincidentally, I know we just showed you 1 and 2. They call each other number 1 and number 2. It's some cute thing from a long time ago. But if they called each other Sam and Cheryl, it would say Sam's trust, Cheryl's trust there. So again, mirror what the client's language is. So that's equal. They have a joint account that they have $550,000 in, and they have 2 savings accounts. This is at the bank. They have saving account 1 and 2 with different purposes. Then they have some money in an IRA that is designed for growth over the next 10 years. So the cash flow, this is what they were looking for. Where does the money come into my account so I can pay my bills? So trust 1 and 2, they're invested identically, and they each pay $7,500 a month. And that goes into the money market account number 1, which is their operating account, which pays monthly bills and expenses. It's combined $20,000 plus $20,000 for expenses and $5,000 for taxes. The joint savings in money market number 2 with $23,000 is a one-time amount. It gets repeated each year, and that pays some of the large expenses every year: insurance, vacation, property tax, like that. So I just told you this, and you're looking at this, and you do this all the time, and you may be saying, so what are we really doing here? What about M1 and M2, and how does that all go? So it could use a little more clarification. So first of all, we put a box around all the money. So all the money is up above: trust 1, trust 2, joint account, and the IRA, and it's separate. Down below, it shows the cash flow. So trust 1, trust 2, and the joint savings are all listed on the left. 1 and 2 flows into the money market account, and so there's $15,000 goes into the operating account, their checking account, pays $10,000 roughly in bills and $5,000 in taxes. The joint savings account, money market number 2, gets $23,000, and that gets divided between insurance, vacation, and property taxes. It's a good start, but there are some ways that you can clean this up. So you can say here, for instance, the amounts here in green, now before they were black, the visual, the green 1, 2, trust 1, 2, and the joint account, then mirror the color of the source of where money is flowing from. So from trust 1, from trust 2, and from the joint savings account into these accounts and paying there. So it gets a little clearer as you go, but what would be most important is for the client to be able to tell this story. When a client can explain what their cash flow plan is, that would be a good sign that they're really on board with you, that you've co-created the right plan that everybody understands. But before I go, I want to ask you the question. You take a look at this again and see if there's one more thing that you could have done for clarity on this page. Remember, it's about color and relationship. The arrows create direction and flow. We did top to bottom. We did left to right. And I changed the colors on Trust 1 and Trust 2 and Joint Account to model the cash flow illustration below. Okay, I'll tell you what it is. The M1 and M2 here below are in blue. So in a perfect world, M1 and M2 up in the investment accounts would be the same blue as the M1 and M2 in the cash flow below. Just thought I'd give you a chance to take a look at this and see if you can see into it a little bit more. So here's your challenge. Your challenge is to work with your clients and create some one-page overviews. A great idea with this is to do some one-pager that you can use over and over again for your clients. Maybe it's estate plan, maybe it's risk, maybe it's gifting, maybe it has something to do with allocation of savings. Maybe some goes to education and retirement and like that. Play around with this. It might be frustrating the first time around, but get through that, because once you get this, it will change the way you work with clients. This is where you work on the highly personal side of things, and it creates efficiency on the technical. Remember, we always talk about the two sides of money, the technical and the personal. This is a good example of how work on the personal side, on how the brain operates, the body operates, comprehension, clarity, and all that. And you pull this together, increase your recall by 650%, let people get the point 63,000 times faster, and you have increased your efficiency on the technical side. Your meetings may be shorter. Your clients' turnaround for decisions may be shorter. Implementation increases. It's a great thing. It takes a little work. Happy to help you with that. I look forward to seeing your samples. And again, remember, there's a course book. Go to part 3 of the course book and you can read some more and see some more samples. Thanks for being with me. Check in with you next time. Be well.